instances, our fears to adopt generative AI is because we also don't understand how do we adequately mitigate some of the risks or manage some of the risks that it presents. So the three outcomes for the session today is to understand the strategic value of generative AI and generative BI, to recognize the importance of mitigating the risks through governance and compliance, and also to leverage AI for innovation while ensuring that we are doing so responsibly, or we're using AI responsibly. Next slide, Katleho. Thank you. So we can make an assumption that everyone knows what generative AI and generative BI is. But for those who might not be aware, generative AI basically is the AI that can create new content such as text, images, music, deep learning techniques. So if you think about the future that we're already living in, the future is not next year or tomorrow. We're already living the future today. You can create anything using generative AI. You can create images. You can create music. So for individuals who are DJs, as an example, the amount of efficiency that generative AI presents is absolutely ridiculous. The same with generative BI, which is an advanced BI tool where you're able to generate insights and automate data analysis to support decision making. So these are the the two, or at least the discussion will be centered around these two. While we understand that for you to use generative AI and generative BI, there is data behind it that enables for you to be able to generate the text or the image. There is machine learning, but for purposes of today's discussion, this is what we will focus on. Next slide, Kat. Okay, so I always encourage that we need to have a culture of learning. We need to have a culture of reading, because the information around the awareness of what GenAI and GenBI brings has been around. If, for example, I subscribe to a lot of journals, just so that I know what is the research that's being done on the specific topics that I have interest in. And just to highlight some of those research papers that you can read today or after the session. McKinsey in 2003, they released a paper to say that actually 1/3 of organizations are using GenAI regularly. So you might be in an organization in various roles and you're not aware that already there are areas in your business that are using GenAI. And the question is, the areas that are already using GenAI, is there governance in place, or is it, let's try it and see if it works? And if there's no governance in place, the purpose of today's discussion is also to say, when there are incidences, risk incidences or breaches that you need to deal with, how do you then navigate that if you have actually not set up the governance as well when you roll it out in the different use cases? And secondly, McKinsey, again, in the paper that they released last year, they mentioned that high performers integrate AI broadly across functions. What GenAI and GenBI does is they improve efficiency and innovation. So the tasks that can be performed using GenAI really allows the organization to free up the time to use, to come up with new products to use to improve efficiency, etc. That is already out there. And importantly, whatever the challenges that have been highlighted include governance and talent acquisition. Governance we'll discuss today. And for me, talent acquisitions also include us having this type of webinars where we can expose some of you who might not naturally be exposed to some of this information. Next slide, Kat. Okay, so what are some of the benefits of Gen AI and Gen BI? We know it increases productivity and efficiency. And how does it do that? If you have tasks that currently are performed by 3 people, and you are able to use generative AI, that frees up a lot of capacity. And also it means that those tasks are executed timelessly, consistently, with accuracy, again, depending on how you've built those Gen AI or Gen BI models to make sure that there is sufficient information to actually give the output that you want from them. It increases decision making or enhanced decision making, especially for individuals in risk governance or risk management, in compliance. And I'm saying we, in that we're not necessarily the data scientists. We may not understand the detail that goes into the data, but at the end of the day, we need to make decisions based on the information that's presented to us. So with Gen AI and Gen BI, it does enhance decision making in that there is consistency. What you're asking and what you're getting out of it. But importantly, again, obviously, we'll address some of the risks that we'll need to take into account regarding that. Cost reduction, it can be argued that upfront, if you are going to host the AI in-house within the organizations, the upfront costs are quite high to set up the model, to develop them, etc. But once you you have that running, the costs actually do reduce over time. So that's one of the benefits. And importantly, the innovation in products and services, and how does Gen AI and Gen BI enable that? You're able to offer more personalized or customized solutions, because it allows you to be able to analyze data that would normally take you a long time, and now you're able to actually analyze it at a click of a button. Next slide, Katleho. Thank you. So what are some of the risks that we really need to take note of and be careful about? And some of it is the inaccuracies. Like any model, it's garbage in, garbage out. It's based on data. Without the data, it can't generate the text, because based on what would it generate the output. So it's important that the data is accurate. And while we're on that, for those who are already using ChatGPT for different reasons, you will note that at the bottom there is a disclaimer that you need to check for accuracy, if the information that you're getting from the AI is actually accurate. So that's one thing that you need to test and check. Yesterday or last night, while preparing for this session, I decided that I'm going to test ChatGPT. So I'm vendor, I speak vendor. So I went on ChatGPT and typed something in English and said, please translate it to me in vendor. It did, but it was not accurate. And I could understand that, it's responding based on the limited text that it might have access to in vendor, as an example. So those are, some of the things you need to look out for. The other risk that's very important is data privacy. So the data that's used in Gen AI and Gen BI, if it's hosted within the organization, obviously you have a lot more control, of the data. You make sure that all the security measures are in place, that it complies with the various regulations, such as Protection of Personal Information Act in South Africa. Some of the sort of things that we need to also take into consideration is if it's you're using a cloud-based solution that's not housed within your organization. There are data privacy laws that needs to be adhered to, and we'll touch a little bit more on data privacy later on, because it's really important when you set up your governance structures and your governance framework that is top of mind, especially when you have data being shared cross-border because the cloud may be hosted somewhere else. And there are biases because these models are built on data. I mentioned earlier it's garbage in, garbage out. So if the data that is used for the model is already biased, the model will be biased. So part of the governance is making sure that you're able to mitigate any risks of bias within those models. And lastly, the security, cyber attacks and data breaches, again, that is top of mind, especially with the various regulations, globally around data security. Thanks, Kat. Next one. And in the discussion that we will have now, in the upcoming slides, it's really trying to share some of the strategies that can be used to mitigate the risks that we've highlighted. And that's not all the risks, that's just some of the risks that we have extrapolated for purposes of this discussion. And what we will go through is just taking you through how do you implement a robust AI governance framework, ensuring that there are regular audits on these AI models. And talking about the regular, the regular audits that needs to be done. For those on the line who come from a governance and compliance background, do you have the skills to also audit, AI models? Or does this now present new opportunities and new career path that you need to think about? And even those who are not in governance, risk and compliance, see this as an opportunity to upskill and reskill yourself so that you are also at the forefront in terms of opportunities that these technologies are presenting. And obviously ensuring compliance with data protection regulations, in different countries, as I mentioned earlier, if you have data hosted on the cloud, that where there is cross-border transfer of data, there are regulations that need to be adhered to. And very importantly, not all of us are tech savvy. So it's also important that we use explainable AI techniques to improve the model transparency, especially to make sure that people who are not the subject matter experts, so that they understand what they're looking at to enable effective decision making. Next slide, Kat. Okay, so now in terms of the AI governance framework, these are the 10 things that I focused on. I'm sure in your space or in your organization, when you look at it, it might look very different. Your governance framework might only have 6 principles, for example, that you will look at. So this is basically to say these are some of the things that I looked at that you can take to your organizations in terms of building an AI governance framework. Next slide, I will go through each one in detail. Next slide, Kate. And my apologies, if I can just pause. If you have a question, please post it on the chat. We will have some time towards the end of the presentation for questions. And if I cannot answer your question, or if it requires a more specialized person like a data scientist, etc., I'll be able to also just point you in the right direction. So starting then with the first item in terms of creating a governance framework, it's important that you have clear governance structure. And in the structure, that's where you establish your AI governance committee. So I'll use an example. With Protection of Personal Information Act and the implementation in different organizations, we know that, in terms of the standards, you have your data stewards, you have your privacy champions, you have, data privacy personnel, etc. We need exactly the same for AI. You need to establish dedicated AI governance committee with clearly defined roles so that everyone knows exactly what they need to do. those who are providing oversight, they need to know that that is their role. They need to have the skills, and the competencies for them to be able to provide the oversight. You have your data scientists, you have your compliance officers. Do the compliance officers have the skills and competencies to actually be able to contribute effectively, and also for them to be able to do what they need to do where compliance is concerned on AI. You need your legal advisors who have the knowledge of all the regulations that impact GenAI. We've seen, for those who does follow the EU, published the EU AI Act. I did post, for those who follow me on LinkedIn, I sort of summarized it, what it says and what they're basically looking at. And we can see other countries also following suit in terms of, just putting out the regulation, specifically looking at the use of AI to make sure that it's used ethically. So that's why we need our legal advisors in that respect. You need senior management to also be in the governance committee. And importantly, the same way that we have chief compliance officers, chief data experts, etc., we need the same for AI. We need data protection officers where AI is concerned, legal advisors and representatives from different business units. Very importantly, I mentioned earlier that in various organizations, we saw from the stats that I think it's McKinsey posted out last year in terms of how many organizations have already implemented AI. You might be surprised when you think that your organization has actually not implemented it. They might have implemented it, you just don't know about it because it doesn't really speak to your respective business unit. So it's important to make sure that everyone in the organization is informed, they know what's actually going on. Next slide, Kat. Okay. So part of your framework, now you know who's going to be in the governance committee. You need clear ethical guidelines and policies. One of the risks of generative AI is that you can create an AI that actually impersonates me. And right now, as we're busy talking, are you sure that it's really me? It could be an AI that's actually just going through the slides. So it's important that there are ethical guidelines, that there are clear policies within the organizations as to what will the organization use AI for. We need to be very clear in terms of the use cases that we're building within the organizations. Ensure that there is transparency in AI operations and decision-making processes. That for me, it's very important, especially for individuals who make decisions within organizations. If you are not the subject matter expert, you want to make sure that the Gen AI and the text and the models and the data that's going in it, it's transparent and easy enough for you to understand, so that you understand what are the outputs, what are the risks that you need to make sure that are mitigated, especially if you are making decisions that can have an impact in the organization. And importantly, create an AI ethics charter that allows principles such as fairness, accountability, transparency, and there's more that you can add in your ethics charter. Thanks, Kat. The next slide. All right. And importantly, you need your risk management process that needs to be clear. So starting from the first point, so you have your governance framework, you have clear accountabilities in terms of you've established your committee, you have your policies in place. Now you build your risk management processes around associated with the deployment of AI. You have your risk management processes relating to data privacy and biases, which is one of the risks I mentioned earlier on, and also security risks. You need to implement risk assessment and mitigating strategies to address the identified risks, and conduct regular risk assessments and audits to evaluate the performance and impact of the AI system. I will unpack this a little bit more in later slides as well, but just in summary for me from this slide is you have to have clear processes. I think with use cases, or at least one of the risks I see when I engage with people from various organizations is you think about it as a POC or proof of concept, and you identify a use case, you come in, you want to deploy and see how it works. It's important that you do have the governance and the process in place, because without that, you might end up with incidences that you don't know how to deal with them, or because you don't have a clear process and guidelines, your response time is longer, which actually means that more or higher risk exposure for yourself and the organization. Next slide, Kate. And importantly, data governance. I think for this one, if there's any organization that doesn't have an adequate data governance framework, policies and processes, that will be in breach of regulation. So I think in large, most organizations already have a data governance framework, already have the policies in place, the framework, but don't forget that now you are using the data for AI. Is the AI model in-house, or are you using a cloud, where the data is shared elsewhere, even cross-border? Do you have, or at least the agreements or contracts that you have in place? Does it actually take into consideration the various legislations and regulations across the different countries and continents? So importantly, data anonymization. I had to repeat that a couple of times to know, for me to sort of pronounce it properly. So making sure that especially for GenBI, because generative BI, you have data, in most instances, it has personal information. You need to make sure that there is encryption, there is anonymity of personal information for you to use the data. And I think, there's a reluctance for organizations to basically say, we are all gung-ho, we can use generative AI. Because if not used responsibly, individuals within companies can make the mistake of actually using data with personal information on a generative AI model, which basically, that is a breach, because your client, have they actually given you the consent for you to use their personal information in a model like this, where anyone can actually have access to that information once it's in the model. So that's actually very important. I cannot stress enough, just making sure that there is anonymity and encryption of data when you use it on this model. Kat, next slide. Thank you. Model governance, again, and for me, I always default to my background in regulatory implementation / compliance / governance, that I'm not a data scientist. So my level of understanding of this model will never be at the level that someone who's a data scientist and a subject matter expert is. So for me, it's important that when we are deploying these models, that there is regular validation and updates of these models to remain accurate and to remain, unbiased. Yesterday, in doing some of my research, I found a paper where someone shared that if and this is actually not related to to GenAI or GenBI, that there is a medication, for example, that was only tested on male patients. And therefore, over time, they realized that it actually doesn't work or doesn't have the same efficacy on females or women, as an example. And that's because there was a bias in how the testing of that medication was done. It was only tested on male patients without also taking into consideration that for women, there are hormones and things like that that will come into play. The same with this type of models. You need to make sure that you keep validating the data, make sure there are no biases, make sure that the data is as inclusive as possible to make sure that the data, or at least the text or the images that are generated, they are accurate, they are unbiased. And secondly, they implement model interpretability and explainability measures. I know those are big words, to understand AI decision-making processes. And that, for me, again, it's for individuals who are not subject matter experts. You want to make sure that there is use of explainable AI techniques that individuals who are not technical can actually understand, and it allows them the transparency so that they are able to make informed decisions based on the models. Thanks, Kat. The next slide. And then on compliance and regulatory adherence, there are various regulations out there. I think if there are people dialing in from other countries, you'll need to look at regulations within your country. But importantly, if there is, the use cloud usage where the cloud is hosted elsewhere, it's also important that you look at your contracts or agreements. The data privacy regulations within those countries are complied with in the use of these models. So stay up to date with relevant laws and regulations governing AI use. You don't have to be a legal expert to stay up to date with the various regulations. Like I said, I follow different journals, just to understand what's happening in other countries. How are they approaching AI and its adoption and deployment within different organizations, and what laws apply in their country, and how are they actually then implementing and operationalizing what those regulations seek to achieve in those countries. So stay up to date, read a lot. The information is available. Even on LinkedIn, there are links where you will find the resources and information, not only in your country, but in other countries as well. And why is that important? We can work from anywhere. So if one of the opportunities is for you to work for an organization that's based in the States, as an example, you want to make sure that you stay abreast and you know exactly what are the laws and regulations that are governing AI use in that country. And ensure AI systems comply with data protection laws, industry standards, and ethical guidelines. Lastly, ensure that there is compliance with the different regulations. I think, in South Africa, we also look at the UK and what they're doing there, and other countries as well. But importantly, if you look at the UK laws and South Africa, you'll see that, there are some similarities there. So, we continue to look at, for example, the EU AI Act to see how is that going to be implemented? How is that actually going to work? The costs for organizations that are using AI models, for them to comply with the regulation. That's also important, because that means those costs will need to be factored in instances where your organization would like to deploy a GenAI model. Thanks, Kat. The next slide. And as I mentioned before, importantly, in your governance framework, it's important that there is continuous monitoring and auditing. I cannot stress that enough. I've already given you the examples in that the models work based on data. It's garbage in, garbage out. If already the data that is used in the models is biased, that's exactly the output. Sometimes it's not only the data that's in the models, but it's also the language and what you are using it for. Be very, very careful in terms of mitigating the risks of biases. And that's why it's important to ensure that there's ongoing monitoring of AI systems so that you're able to detect and address issues in real time. Conducting regular audits also ensures that compliance with governance policies and various legislations and regulations is in place. And also importantly, this allows you to implement real-time sort of risk mitigations if there are any findings from your audits. Something that's also very important is implementing monitoring tools to track AI models and performance. So, while we get excited about the opportunities that AI is bringing, I've talked about the opportunities for new career paths. I've talked about the opportunity to upskill and reskill ourselves. There are some people on the line I recognize where this is a business opportunity for you. You can build a monitoring tool that you can make available to organizations that either don't have the appetite or the finances to build the AI monitoring tools. So for me, Gareth, I saw you on the line. Kwakanya, I know you're also on the line, and various other people. I see this as an opportunity for you to say, we are already living in the future. What solutions are organizations going to look for out there? Remember, some of the organizations that are going to implement the AI modules are small organizations. It's your, I'm in financial services, I'm in insurance. So your small brokerages, for example, who want to, create more efficiencies in their, operations, they will be able to implement this. Now, the compliance businesses that are out there that are already monitoring in those brokerages, do they have the expertise? Do they have the skills? Do they have the tools? The monitoring tools to track the performance and flag any anomalies and deviations. So for me, this again, I'm highlighting because I really see the opportunities for various industries to either build new businesses and also to create new skills within the different industries and businesses. Thanks, Kat. Next slide. And very important, we can come up with the best ideas. Some of the best strategies fail because you leave people behind. I think for some of us, we think of AI as a threat to our jobs, and I don't see it that way. I think throughout my discussion today, I'm hoping that you get the same sense and the same confidence that actually it will not take the jobs away. What it's doing is it's creating more opportunities, new opportunities that we just need to be open-minded. We need to seek or at least look for ways that or resources and tools for us to upskill ourselves. So within an organization, if you are going to deploy an AI or GenAI or GenBI tools, make sure that you bring your people with you. Create the awareness within the organization. As I mentioned earlier, some of you don't even know that within your organizations already there is adoption of AI technologies. So make sure that there is awareness within your organization. It will create some excitement. Right now, some of you feel like your organization is still running in the 1980s. They've not moved with the time. Actually, they might have. It's just that you don't know because there hasn't been that awareness. So create the awareness. Train your employees, tell them what's actually happening, the use cases that you use in the GenAI for, tell them about it. Tell them about the ethical use, where there is communication to the people in the organization that, listen, don't use AI, explain why not. because people then take it negatively. There are reasons why organizations would not want to just open it up for everyone. And one of, I think two of them that I've already mentioned, actually three. It's, around data privacy, data security, cyber security threats. But it's important that you understand why. So it's important to conduct training within the organization, raise awareness, take your employees with you, let them know that there is this technology that you embrace as an organization. Share with them the wins, when it actually works and how it's going to transform businesses. When you take your people with you, they will not be scared of AI taking away their jobs. In sharing, you're also empowering them for them to realize that there are now opportunities for new career path within the organization. They can start thinking, how do I develop myself? How do I reskill myself, etc. Organize workshops and training sessions within your organizations and talk about AI ethics and AI governance. Thanks, Kat. Next slide. And point 9, I would like to really stress and emphasize, especially for the risk champions or risk and governance compliance subject matter experts who are on the line. For those organizations who currently have use cases where you are using generative AI and generative BI, it's important, again, without a framework, if there are incidences, your response time is going to be slow because you're going to have to start from scratch to think, okay, what do we do? How do we do it? How do we respond? Having a governance framework in place, having clear policies in place, and also clear accountabilities. It also means that if there's an incident, you know how to deal with those incidents, and you're able to deal with that timelessly. There's clear accountability, where you can hold individuals accountable, and also there's clear protocol and reporting that allows you to respond to incidences and also make sure that those incidences are raised and elevated to the right governance structures within the organizations. The next slide, Kat, which is the last item in our governance framework, it's stakeholder engagement. Do not leave your stakeholders behind. Importantly, please don't live in the bubble of your organization only. Learn about what's happening outside your organization in the industry. Learn how other organizations are deploying these models. Not even in your industry only. Learn about how other industries are actually using this. So actively participate in industry consultation and collaborate with the regulators, with other people who are really shaping the future of AI, in the different industries. As a governance person, it's tempting to just stay in your lane. Don't stay in your lane when it comes to technology. Learn as much as possible. Ensure that your stakeholders, there's transparent communication about all the initiatives. Make sure they understand what the impact are. Your risk specialists, please make sure that they understand what are the risks. Make sure that there is a clear framework and policy as to how the stakeholders can respond to that. And provide easily understandable summary of AI reports for non-technical stakeholders. That is very, very important because, again, I mentioned earlier, I am not a data scientist. I have no skills in creating these models. I am the user who needs to make sure that there's governance in place. So it's important that the language in which the reports are communicated to the various stakeholders is one that can easily be understood to ensure that we are all making an informed decision in instances where we need to make decisions. Next slide, Kate. And for me, in conclusion, before I talk about the next steps, I just want to reiterate a couple of things, and I'm glad that we will have a lot of times for us to, to take questions. My message is, don't live in the bubble of just your role and your current role, because our world is evolving. Technology is transforming the way in which organizations conduct business. Technology is changing and transforming your consumers, your customers. They are changing with it. So don't stay in the bubble of your role within the organization. Don't stay in the bubble of your organization alone. Understand what's happening in the industry. And also don't stay in the bubble of your industry alone. Learn what's happening in other industries. Read a lot. The tools and information is readily available. You don't need to be a subject matter expert for you to learn new things and new concepts. And I think technology forces us to do that. Technology is not here to take jobs, but if you stay in the bubble of your current role, of your current organization, your current industry, yes, it will take your job, because you're not embracing it, you're not looking at it from a perspective of what are the opportunities. Here are the opportunities that GenAI and GenBI is bringing. You can learn new skills. There are new industries that will emerge from this. There are opportunities for you to expand your knowledge beyond what's in front of you. Take advantage of that. See it as an opportunity. In the organizations where you're already deploying these models, please take your people with you, because they're sitting there thinking, this is happening somewhere else, it doesn't affect me. It actually affects all of us. It affects you as a consumer. This is how some of your banks are already talking to you right now. Some of the companies where they have chatbots, as an example, it's already there. You already, hence I say, the future is now. You're living in it today. You're either part of it or you're a spectator. Be in the arena. So importantly, continue exploring and investing in GenAI and GenBI. It's not going anywhere. You're either part of it or you'll be a spectator and you'll be left behind. Secondly, strengthen your governance framework, because it's, again, the temptation is it's proof of concept. Let's see how it works. Before you know it, a year later, or once there's an incident, everyone starts panicking. It's important that your governance framework is robust enough. And lastly, foster a culture of ethical AI use, and maintain open communication with the stakeholders and build trust and support around AI initiatives. I think from my side, I'm really hoping that from this discussion, there is one or two things that you've gained from this discussion. And just lastly, from my side, the reason why I'm so passionate about this discussion is actually also part of my PhD thesis. And, I'm also writing a paper with my PhD supervisor, Professor Rabelani Dagada, which will present he'll present at one of the conferences. So I'm really humbled by the attendance of everyone who is online. And I will open up for any questions that anyone has. Again, I'm not a data scientist, so if I cannot answer the question, I'll show you there is someone also on the line who might have the answer. So Verity, right back at you for us to go through the questions and to get any feedback from the attendees as well, or any comments that they wish to share.
Thank you for your wisdom and insights, Vuladani. That was an absolutely amazing session. We have 4 questions from our audience. The first is from Mary Jane, and she says, you spoke about transparency. How important is it to let our clients know about AI, and how do we integrate AI with customer service processes? Sorry, Vuladani, you're just on mute.
My apologies. Firstly, if you gathered client data, you know that obviously you need consent, and that consent need to include what are you going to use that data for, what is the purpose. So if you're going to use it on AI models, the use, is it still aligned with the purpose that you collected that data for? ethical, because if not, you need to get your client's consent for you to use that data for other purposes that you're collecting it for, i.e. in this instance. So most consent or customer consents, from most organizations and banks already include, the use of analytics to gain insight so that you can offer the clients more personalized solutions. So for me, that is basically, one of the things that you need to take into consideration. Verity, can you just repeat that question? I just want to see if I've answered all of it.
Sure. You spoke about transparency. How important is it to let our clients know about AI, and how do we integrate AI with customer service processes?
Okay. The first question I've answered in terms of making sure that, yes, your client needs to give you a consent. The manner in which you get the consent currently in your current existing processes, you can update your documents to make sure that it does include a consent for you to use their data for analytics, etc., if that's not already there. And on the second question as to how do you now implement that and bring it into your processes, it's important that there is a clear use case. So first, do your work in terms of analyzing, can I use, what is my process? My process is A to Z. Am I able to use an AI model for this process? If I use the AI model, what sort of data do I need for me to be able to provide the outcome or the service that I want to provide to my clients? So yes, absolutely, but you need to make sure that you do your due diligence. You need to look at your processes and identify the use case. So don't just take a process and plug in an AI model. It might not be effective. So here's an example. If I contact a company and I start chatting to a bot, sometimes I'm okay with it because I just want, maybe tips on how to do something. I don't have a problem with that. But there are certain instances where I don't want to talk to a bot, I want to speak to a person. So you need to look at your customer experience. How does it enhance your customer experience? And how do you, use that model to deliver that exceptional customer service you wish to deliver? Thanks, Verity. Next question.
Thanks, Philizani. What do you envisage could be issues around regulatory and legal issues around AI?
So ethics is the big one. Are we actually using AI for the right reasons? Because you can use it for all the wrong reasons. You can use it to impersonate anyone out there. Let's use generative BI as an example, where you have people's personal information. You can build a whole new person using that data. So hence I'm saying ethical use, very important. Regulatory, without clear ethical guidelines, anyone and everyone is going to do whatever they think is right. I think we saw that with things like cryptocurrency, where everyone was excited. You can make, double your returns over 24 hours, etc. And because it was not regulated, it led to a lot of fraud. So like anything else, it can be abused. It can be used for the wrong reasons. It's very important that there are clear ethical guidelines. There are regulatory standards that needs to be adhered to in the use of this type of models. Thanks, Verity. Next one.
Our next question is from Vuyani. Does this mean using AI to monitor AI performance, or will this require human intervention? Can you give an example of the tool that could be used for monitoring?
Okay, so I've been doing my research to sort of two things that I wanted to find is an AI monitoring tool that's already out there. The second one I wanted I wanted to find an existing one. I also wanted to see how it actually works. That is still something that I'm researching. There's a couple of companies that I'm talking to. I think it's premature for me to say yay. They actually have a tool that actually working exceptionally well, etc. That will be an uninformed endorsement, if I can put it in that manner. But there are companies that are building that. So you use a combination. Hear me out as to why. Monitoring, you can build an AI tool that actually monitors and will identify those incidences much quicker than a human being. You need people to test, because even with the tools, there are people behind it. So you can also have people over and above, in addition to using an AI tool to conduct your monitoring. You need individuals who can actually go in and test and make sure that those monitoring tools are also doing what they're supposed to do. They're identifying the risks and there are no gaps. Because it's people who build these models. It's data that's brought in by people that are used in this model. So you can't leave people or human beings out of it. I hope that makes sense. Verity?
And our next question is from Tafa. How do you integrate AI, or rather generative AI, in auditing services?
There's already a lot of research and a lot of work on that. So I'm going to use an example. I'm more on the FAIS, Financial Advisory and Intermediary Act type of monitoring. So in FAIS, just using an example for those who are not in the industry, when a financial advisor is out there giving advice, there are certain things that they need to, or there's a process that they follow, and there are certain requirements that they need to adhere to. You can actually, so in auditing, and I'm using that as an example, because you already know, I'm looking for X, this is what I need to find when I come in, this is your processes, this is what they need to look like. I can actually, use a model for auditing. However, like I mentioned earlier, models are built by people. So you'll need to make sure that that model is robust enough, and you'll need to check on that model to make sure that whatever auditing that's actually done using the model, it is actually accurate. It's also not biased, and it is able to identify the different risks based on what you actually auditing at that time. Think about SARS. How is SARS able to do your auto assessments? They don't know every one of you, but they have your data in the form of all the RP5s, etc. So does SARS use a model to audit? How do they identify, the individuals that might be naughty and not paying their taxes? So the information and the tools are already out there. It's how do you get access to them, or at least learn about them. Verity?
Okay, we have quite a detailed question from Gareth Hopkins. I believe a big hurdle is going to be the knowledge base for an AI model. The AI model needs knowledge to be able to add value to an operation. There are, of course, the general models such as ChatGPT, but what if a business wants to create an AI model based on a unique product they have created? For example, I have a SaaS product which we sell to FSPs. Unique system, unique function and features and user interface, etc. How best to implement the product into my business? What is the best way to go about creating the knowledge base for your custom AI model?
Your model needs information, it needs data, it needs accurate data. You need to teach them the language, or at least what you want out of them, how you want them to analyze it. So Gareth, I'm just looking at the time as well. I think that's one that we can explore even further, especially for the organizations that want to, they don't want to use your open AI models as an example. There is a lot of work and a lot of cost into building, those models internally to be able to do what you want it to do. But again, these things depend on, these models depend on information, on data, and teaching it the language of what you actually want out of them. Verity, I'm cognizant of the time. I don't like running over. So if there are any further questions, guys, follow me on LinkedIn, and we can engage these resources and information available out there. Do your research. Yeah, that's it from my side. And thank you so much for your time, for investing your time to come and join me, and for listening to me. I really appreciate you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Vulisani. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today, and we hope to see you at our next online webinar. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Cheers, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.